Shay?
Anna?
Oh, good, you're here. So in our pilot episode, we touched upon this idea of reflective pedagogy as the driving force behind this podcast.
Yeah.
But what the heck actually is reflective pedagogy?
Well, let's find out.
Hello, and welcome to the Teacher Think Aloud podcast, a podcast for reflective practice for teachers of English around the world. I'm Anna.
And I'm Shay.
I think we should start with some John Dewey.
Yes, Dewey, the father of experimentalism within education.
Ta-da!
Dewey once said, "We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience." And that is essentially the premise of reflective pedagogy.
Cool. So our work here is done.
Yeah. Thanks, listeners, for tuning in to the shortest podcast episode of all time.
No, but in all seriousness, there is a lot to unpack here.
So, reflective practice involves the process of continuous critical reflection to foster self-learning and to improve subsequent practices.
I think the key word here has to be continuous, right?
Yes, exactly. It's a cyclical process.
Teach, reflect, revise. Teach again, reflect, revise.
Yep, that's the idea. Now, we've mentioned Dewey, but there's another MVP in the world of experiential learning, David Kolb.
All right.
Kolb captured this model in what he called the experiential learning cycle. The first stage of learning is a concrete experience, in this case, a teaching experience.
Okay.
Then you have the reflective observation stage, where you review what you did and reflect on the experience itself. Here, I think the goal is to examine your lesson plan and how it compared to your thought process and reactions during the experience. After that is abstract conceptualization, drawing conclusions or learning something from the experience. And then you move into active experimentation, planning and trying out something new based on what you learned.
Okay. So to summarize, experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, experimentation. And then the process starts all over again.
Right. So none of this is going to happen automatically. We need to deliberately implement this cycle so that we're consistently evolving from one teaching moment to another.
Yeah.
We can also differentiate between two types of reflection in action and reflection on action.
Okay. So when I hear reflection in action, it sounds like what I do in class. You know, I'm in the middle of an activity and I realize, oh, wow, this is going great. Or, oh crap, this is not working. So I change my strategy mid-lesson.
Yeah, and a lot of teachers do that automatically. But the component that's often missing is the second step, reflection on action.
Like after class is over.
Yeah, but I mean, how many of us are actually sitting down to reflect on our class and thinking through how we can improve for the next class?
Yeah, I mean, I try, but I don't always have time for that.
Same. But even just jotting down a few words on paper or on a note-taking app, that can make a huge difference.
So cultivating a reflective practice really comes down to honing your self-awareness, both as an educator and as an individual.
Yes, self-awareness is a powerful ally for a teacher, especially when so much of what and how we teach can change in the moment.
Okay, great. So in reflective practice, we strive to heighten our awareness. But I mean, that can be incredibly uncomfortable, scary even. It's easier to just pretend like everything's fine.
Totally. We have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. We all know that reflecting on our work makes us better teachers, but many teachers are still reticent to participate in reflective pedagogy, especially when it involves observation, either by peers or higher ups.
And I mean, it makes sense. We're all human. We all have fragile egos, or at least I do.
Me too.
It's difficult, though, to face your weaknesses and feelings of inferiority. That's true for novice teachers.
Oh, yeah, the spring chickens.
Yeah, spring chickens, as well as seasoned educators, right? And perhaps the more experienced teachers also have the fear of being phased out or feeling irrelevant.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I've felt it. Have you?
Definitely. And what presents even more of a challenge is that on top of our fear of critique, The idea of having to change is very anxiety producing.
And this is especially true if we start ruminating on the experience, getting stuck in those negative thought cycles. We need to turn those thoughts into pointed, constructive feedback that actually inspires action.
So basically, we need to do what we tell our students to do, right? When they're providing feedback to each other.
Right.
Start with the positive and then provide targeted feedback with suggestions on how to improve.
I like that. Start with the positive. It's so easy to get stuck on what went poorly or what we could improve on next time. And yes, that's an important piece, but I also think that we need to flip the script.
Wait, what do you mean by flip the script?
I mean, approaching reflection with a deficit mindset sort of taints the entire process from the get-go. With that mindset, adding reflective practice to our plates with all of the other things that we have to do as teachers, it might seem an impossible task. So I think the first crucial component in the context of reflective pedagogy is that we approach it with an asset mindset, perhaps seeking to identify areas in which we're particularly strong. I think that that's a sweet place to begin.
Yeah, I really love that asset mindset. So we've established that reflective teaching is grounded in cultivating awareness as a way of empowering an educator to make conscious decisions in a classroom environment and harnessing their unique skills and abilities to be proactive and make changes in their instruction. But maybe we should get into some concrete approaches and strategies for reflective practice.
Give the people what they want. Right. So there are many ways to approach our reflections. For our purposes, we're focusing on two approaches, top down and bottom up. Top-down approaches, for example, may apply educational research to classroom teaching or use a methods approach based on systematic reasoning.
So this means that, say, I know the theory behind learning vocabulary. So then I compare that to what I'm doing in the classroom, and I realize I might not be doing it in a way that aligns completely with the theory. At this point, I might then try to realign myself and systematically apply that theory to my classroom, right?
Right. So that's a great example of top-down reflection, the top being the theory that informs what's happening in your class. Now, a bottom-up approach instead starts with what's actually happening in the classroom and works its way out.
So with vocabulary, you might notice that teaching a large number of words in one class isn't working for your students, right? I mean, that's a simple example, but still. So the next time after you've noticed that, you break the vocab into smaller chunks. This does connect to theory, of course, but theory is not the starting point. It's based on observation.
Both a bottom-up and top-down approach have pros and cons, right? And I would argue that reflective pedagogy could and should be a combination of the two approaches. Our reflection on our teaching should pull from what we learned during teacher formation programs. Yes, absolutely. But also incorporate what we've learned along the way. Yeah. Experience is the best teacher, after all.
So they say, or actually, so John Dewey says.
Yes, back to Dewey.
Yeah. So Dewey identified 4 factors of reflection. First, reflection is a meaning-making process from experience.
Okay, so experience is the best teacher, and we have to find meaning in our experience. The other factors?
The second factor is reflection is a rigorous way of thinking about teaching and learning.
So we have to do it systematically, not randomly.
Yep. And third factor, it's a communal act best done with others and for others. And fourth, it's a set of attitudes about teaching and learning.
Nice, Dewey. So wise.
So wise.
I'm particularly interested in this third factor, reflection as a communal act. So far, we've only talked about self-reflection. And yes, reflective teaching is a personal tool that teachers can use to observe and evaluate the way they behave in their classroom. It can be both a private process as well as one that you discuss with colleagues.
So then, Shay, what's your experience with reflective teaching?
Well, for me, most of my reflective teaching has come in the form of independent study, particularly since we've been living through a pandemic. I actually record every session of mine on Zoom, with students' permission, of course. And then I review areas post-session that might have felt spot on or a little off. After I review the session, I might tweak a lesson plan in that moment so that when I revisit it, I've already made considerable reflections and alterations.
Yeah, I mean, I record a lot of my online classes too, though not all of them like you, but isn't it weird though to watch yourself on screen?
Oh, for sure. Watching yourself teach, much like hearing your own voice, feels a little unnatural. But I think that's why approaching the reflective process from an asset mindset is key.
Yeah.
Over the last year, it truly has become a regular practice for me, and it's facilitated by the speed up functionality on Zoom recordings. So I don't feel like it takes up all that much time.
So for one, so this is an example of technology being on our side.
Absolutely. I love when that happens. What about you? What are your go to formats for reflection?
Well, beyond watching recordings of myself and jotting down notes after each class, I also like to think through my teaching with others.
So, who's your go to person?
Well, I mean, obviously you, Shay.
I'll admit I was digging a little there.
Well, I mean, we have such great conversations about our teaching. That's why this podcast exists.
Mhm.
But also, I like to organize informal gatherings of colleagues where we reflect on our own performance from the month. I did this at Fordham, remember? I started a monthly event called Chat and Sip.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
Yeah, so every month I would invite instructors to join an informal setting, usually a coffee shop near campus, and share what was happening in their classes. They would come with recent success stories and challenges, and we would reflect together, bouncing ideas off of one another and sharing resources.
My favorite thing about attending those chat and sips was the opportunity to be introspective within a community of practice.
Mhm.
Sometimes hearing that other people were facing similar challenges led to collaborative problem solving, which I think was your goal in creating those spaces, right?
Yeah, exactly. So maybe let's leave our listeners with one final thought. Shay?
Right. Here's a quote from social scientist Schoen from 1983. Reflection is not a superficial process of introspection. Rather, it is an evidence based, integrative, analytical, capacity building process that serves to generate, deepen, critique, and document learning. The ability to reflect on one's own practice when confronted by a novel, unusual, or complex situation distinguishes expert practitioners from novices.
Beautiful. Beautiful. With this in mind, we want to encourage you, our listeners, to think about how you can expand and enhance your own reflections on teaching.
Do you have a go to person? Do you feel comfortable recording yourself? Are you truly taking the time to reflect on your practice?
For more resources on today's topic, take a look at our website and our podcast's anchor page, anchor.fm/teacherthinkaloud.
We welcome you to reflect on these questions and join the conversation on our various social media accounts. You can email us via our contact form at teacherthinkaloud.com, tweet at thinkaloud_pod, or leave a comment on Instagram at thinkaloud_pod or our Facebook account at Think Aloud Podcast. This podcast is truly about you, our listeners, so we welcome your reflections, questions, and ideas.
Thanks for joining us today on the Teacher Think Aloud podcast. Until next time, happy teaching
and happy reflecting.